I found myself trapped in a cycle, yet I was required to commit imperfect crimes. To escape it, I killed the person 6 times, only to be deemed a failure by the system each time. Despite the authorities never catching me, why do they consider me a failure? Do you think imperfect crime merely means evading police capture? Wearing gloves and a hood, I still couldn't shake off the almost fanatic nervousness within me. Moonlight entered the room, the cooling moon beam unable to reveal the situation inside, but it knew clearly that the person I had to kill was lying on the bed in the center of the room. This was my second visit. Last time, trembling, I plunged the sharp knife into her carotid artery, her warm blood immediately splattering over me. The scent of blood lingered around my nose, and with trembling hands, I checked for her breath. Only after I had fled in panic did the system's cold mechanical voice rang out, mocking the crime as devoid of any aesthetics. Laughable, I stopped my frenzied run, grinding my teeth, cursing the system. I had been a law-abiding citizen for over 20 years, never having committed such a heinous act. Different mechanical voices continued, unaffected by my accusations, stating that street cameras captured the host 17 times. Biological traces of the host were found at the crime scene in 3 places, and a witness saw the host fleeing the scene, still gasping for air. My eyes red from too much agitation. I argued that the police hadn't caught me yet, so it had no right to declare my failure. The system. The Siri mechanical laugh followed, predicting that investigative authorities would arrest the host within 72 hours. The moment the police, in their black uniforms, handcuffed me, everything went black, and I was back to the moment before I first killed. This time, I carefully planned a route that avoided all surrounding cameras. He also bought gloves, shoe covers, a hood, and protective gear to prevent leaving behind any fingerprints, shoe prints, or hair at the scene. Since I purchased these items at different times and places, I did not arouse police suspicion. As the night deepened, I approached the house silently, enveloped in a murderous aura. To avoid complicating the cleanup, I chose to suffocate her this time, avoiding a messy scenes, watching her struggle under my grasp, from kicking and grabbing the sheets to her eyes bulging in silence. I smiled lightly, everything proceeding under my control. After covering her with blankets, hiding her ghastly death face, I left. This time, I couldn't leave through the usual path to avoid the cameras. I had to escape through the window. The window was tight, and my rubber gloves were too slippery to open it, so I took them off. After opening the window with my bare hands, I wiped off the fingerprints I had left on the window, and with my hands on the sill, I jumped out, disappearing into the night. Mission failed. Biological traces of the host were left at the crime scene in one place. Investigative authorities are expected to arrest the host within 10 days. The system mocked again. In a rage, my eyes red, I refused to believe it. The despy mechanical laughter followed, revealing that my 3-dimensional fingerprints had been left in the mud on the window's ill corner, realizing the oversight. I felt ashen, defeated by the realization that despite all precautions, I declared I would no longer partake in such evil deeds. Since falling into this cycle, not only had I lost my previous memories, but the vivid recollections of my victims' agonized faces haunted me, overwhelming my conscience. The system, indifferent, announced my first mission abandonment and subjected me to a 3rd-level punishment. The pain was like being gripped and released by an invisible hand, thrown into an abyss, and endlessly tormented, causing me to sweat coldly. never had. I experienced such excruciating pain, as if my body was being torn apart, followed by the sensation of being run over by car after car. Please, I beg you, I pleaded in a hoarse voice, agreeing to continue the mission. Suddenly, fragments of memories flooded my mind, taking photos with my parents under cherry blossom trees in the park, smearing cake cream on my best friend's face, walking hand in hand with my boyfriend at dusk. Each scene was a source of past happiness. Tears of pain streamed down my face as I begged for it to stop. The third time, I no longer focused on how to clean the scene or restore it to its original state. If there was no crime scene to begin with, how could there be any evidence of my crime? Calmly, I acquired the necessary tools and waited from day until night. I found myself in the body of habiting a physically strong middle-aged man with not particularly large but spirited eyes, powerful arms, and an average building, all of which were endowed with considered able strength. His fingers and teeth were stained yellow from cheap cigarettes, which oddly enough made my actions easier. Such omen would not draw second glance if thrown into a crowd, and as I approached a house in the darkness, no one gave me any excess attention. Carrying a bucket that was neither too large nor too small, I walked quickly and headed down. As the night deepened, with only that house emitting a strange red light hidden in the darkness, I watched the window that glowed red and chocolate. Sinisterly, the mechanical laughter joined at mine, mocking, "What's so funny?" Laughing that I've finally completed the task. "And you should let me go now, right?" I licked my chapped lips, pulling a grim smile as the cold voice declared the mission a failure. I wrote a red enduring belief. Hosting. You're too foolish. The task I assigned was to kill, and you didn't even kill the person. So what completion are you talking about? The system's voice oozed at disdain. Shocked? A video it displayed showed a woman, disheveled, emerging from a house engulfed in flames, collapsing after a severe coughing fit. Fire trucks arrived to extinguish the fire, and ambulances whisked away the victims. I realized the woman was my target, and I clenched my teeth in frustration. Given another chance and the same tools, I acquired another set and hid in the darkness. Entering the room for the fourth time, the woman was sleeping soundly. A string led her in her bed, as I had the second time. After doing this, I calmly diffused the room in gasoline and ignited the curtains before escaping. Through the window, it lawed lowly, like a bloodthirsty demon. System, what do you have to say this time? Another bout of mechanical laughter ensued. Host, you've shown significant progress, but unfortunately, the police will still open an investigation, and the criminal suspect will live a life of anxiety and hardship as a fugitive. How is that a perfect crime? Why would the police automatically assume it? Was arson with the intent to destroy evidence? 1. All traces at the scene are obliterated by the fire, even the body being charred? I asked coldly. Hey, the host is still tonight, Yvette replied. Show me a video where investigators in protective suits and gases masks examine the fire scene, with clerks busy noting down there. Findings, the flames were extinguished, leaving only charred remains and walls stained black and yellow. The body had been removed, like live for forensic analysis. As I thought this, the system, as if reading my thoughts, switched the view to a bright, clean autopsy room. The body was unrecognizable, limbs shriveled and blackened, clearly carbonized. A forensic pathologist in a lab coats and medical gloves opened the charred remains, observed carefully, and had an assistant note the autopsy results. The trachea was clean, devoid of foreign substances, excluding the possibility of death by smoking inhalation during a fire. Real easy anga. bodies from a fire would struggle to breathe, leaving black soot in the trachea. A clean trachea meant the victim did not die from smoke inhalation, but was dead before the fire was fired, set to destroy evidence. I fell silent, then spoke after a long pause. Give me some time to think. I went to the library, heading straight for the legal section, meticulously searching for books on criminal law, criminology, and criminal investigation. Apart from a few snippets of life the system had shown me, I couldn't remember anything from before entering the cycle. But, driven by a learning instincts, I decided to study a more systematic and complete knowledge system. Does the perfect crime really exist? If the crimes committed by fugitives can't be considered red perfect, then perhaps only those crimes that remains undiscovered, unrecorded, and thus part of the dark figure of crime could be deemed perfect. However, considering the randomness and uncontrollability of such crimes, I quickly dismissed the idea. My attention turned to a case with a brutal methods of crime that remained unsolved for over 20 years, without even a suspect identified. Closing the book, I had Applin. I bought suitcases and a large nylon bags, again killing the sleeping woman by strangulation and placing her large body in the bag to haul away. The physical strength of my host, the body made this task relatively easy and quick. I purchased medical textbooks, delving into every bone and meridian of the human body. The 2 knives each chose proved to be highly effective, slicing through the skin with these. Beautiful, isn't it? I mused, staring at the pieces of flesh I had cut into uniform life-sized and shaped blocks, much like pieces of art. The system's response was only silence. I found it exquisitely beautiful, and Chuck led foolish to myself, admiring the neat patterns and the alignment of bones, much like the skills of an expert butcher. I carefully felt each texture of the skin, following the direction of the bones, gently placing the knife, then swiftly, steadily, and accurately making the cut. After a full day and night of work, the entire body was disassembled into over 2,000 neat arranged pieces of flesh, which Ethan meticulously packed into black plastic bags. Looking thoughtfully at the remaining piles of blood-stained bones, I mixed quicklime and ash with water, filtering out a clear liquids to boil. With the bones, I continued this process, removing any detached fat and gelatin until the mixture was devoid of any oily residue. Finally, I laid out the bones to dry, accelerating the process with an electric fan. Once dry, I placed the bones into a blender, turning it on to produce bone powder. Under the moonlight, riding my electric scooter, I let the powder scatter in the wind from my fingertips. Having read criminals investigation literature, I knew investigators focused their attention around the location where a body is found. So I packed these black plastic bags into a suitcase and took a taxi to a neighboring city. The perfume I wore masked the initial hints of decay and the scent of blood. The taxi driver, without the slightest suspicion, simply saw me as a regular passenger. And under the cover of night, I sought out the starving stray dogs in the city. They eager devoured the food I prepared, and within a few days, my suitcase was empty. Watching a dirty Doberman, its original color unrecognizable, finishing the last piece of meat, I laughed out loud, almost to the point of madness. Perfect, isn't it? She was completely erased from this world without a trace, just like that unsolved case from over 20 years ago, where even the suspects could not be found. It was complete but not beautiful. The familiar cold voice then spoke, suggesting I had only committed a crime without any sense of beauty. Not beautiful? I asked it frantically, pointing out how each piece of flesh was precisely measured and cut into the most perfect shapes. and even the bones were disposed of in what Ike inside read the most romantic way, dissolving into the night air with the evening breeze. How can you say it's not beautiful? I ridiculed, comparing the system to a certain naive detectives who thought himself clever but was actually foolish. My homage to the methods of old cases was clearly seen through by it. It even mocked me as being as useless as a certain gluttonous detective from literary works. The system's voice resonated in my mind like Abel, stating that a perfect crime requires completeness and beauty. Yet all I had done was complete the task. But when he looked down at my hands, they were supposedly covered in the stench of blood. Yet under the moonlight, they were impeccably clean. Yes, I hung my head. Perfect indeed, but not beautiful. I remained lost in a sea of documents and papers, trying to ignite my potential and searching for hints of the so-called perfect crime out crimes of passion, revenge, greed, sexual motives, and disguising crime scenes, concealing bodies. When it came across materials on criminal investigation, a sudden inspiration struck me. Contract killings. Why hadn't I thought of this before? How could my hands be stained with any trace of blood? Just as this idea crossed my mind, the system coldly spoke, not supporting the hiring of others to commit murder. Enraged, I questioned, why not let me hire someone else to do the killings? Surely, this is the perfect crime. Do you think the person you hire will have no slips, make no mistakes, or not betray you in the end? Naive. It SC oft. I revisited a case that I had glanced at and quickly closed before reading it carefully, and then, with a smile, told it, "Find no need for others. I'll do it myself." I began to study the women's social relationships and her life circle. The social circle wasn't complex, just an ordinary office worker with a 9 to 5 jobs, earning a modest salary. Her parents deceased, currently single with few friends, and abrogated 5 years her junior. Perhaps due to her reclusive nature, she wasn't close to anyone, not even her own brother. She was the chosen victim. Recalling professional books I had read in the library and comparing them to the reality of this cyclic world, I couldn't help but laugh. After some effort and time obtaining what I needed, I arranged my plans, readying myself for the 6th murder attempt, arriving here for the 6th time. Familiar with the route, I didn't avoid the cameras. Instead, I walked quickly under them, wearing a green military jacket, numbly reaching out to strangle her. She kicked a few times, her eyes not even closing in death. I meticulously arranged the scene, erasing any trace of my presence, then disguised the scene as I wanted the police to found it before leaving the familiar place. Satisfied. System. What's the outcome this time? I washed my hands in the dimly lit home, grinning. It was silent. Then played a video of the interrogation room, where the victim's brother sat behind bars, sobbing, hands shackled. Officer, I really don't know how my sister ended up dead at home. I didn't go out that night. Then why were your skin cells found under your sister's fingernails? And why did the scratches on your hands match her nails? And why did the surveillance capture you going to your sister's house? I really don't know. I was drinking with friends that night. Which friends? Where? At my place. We got drunk. I didn't know his name or contact details. The interrogator, clearly angered by his evasive answers, stood up abruptly, slamming the table. Perfect. I interrupted the video, chuckling. All the evidence points to him. I'm sure the court will judge based on these facts. Indeed, I mimicked historical miscarriages of justice, finding an innocent scapegoat to bear the brunt of my actions. This was the most thrilling and complete beauty, the system, after a long silence, finally spoke. A killer kills the deserving, not the innocent. Did that girl deserve to die? What did she do wrong? You've made me kill her over and over. It seems you are the ones who deserve to die. Unable to contain my fraying nerves, I roared, but it only waited for me too. Sometimes calm down before speaking slowly. Those who uncover the truth bear more pain than ordinary people. I looked up blankly, smiling. Well, say what you will. Are you telling me to prepare for the 7th murder? It was silent and it knew the outcome. I spent days and nights in the library, and it didn't disturb me, letting me peruse countless materials. I began to doubt, wondering if this was all a system trick, enjoying my descent into a bloodthirsty lunatics with no real escape from the cycle. Nearly despairing, I refused to succumb, clinging to even a sliver of hope. I dove back into historical cases and theories, judging from the perspective of both the criminal and the investigator, creating evil and fighting against it. Only by thoroughly understanding these aspects could I grasp the entire tie, spending every days with criminal investigations. You must be half an expert by now, the system suddenly said, breaking my concentration. Yes, I replied calmly, turning the pages. If it weren't T for copyright issues, my countered investigation manual would have been published. It led, and so did the system. Its laughter no longer grating. I thank you, Ray, getting closer to the truth. It said. I closed the latest issue of the Legal Daily and stood up. What is the truth? Is what you see always the truth? I pondered as the system inquired about my departure from the library, hinting at Applin both completed and exquisite. It began to change my appearance, adopting the image of a young blue-collar worker, transforming myself into Arson College, my graduate just starting work. Encounters with the woman began casually. As a fellow joggers in the neighborhood, we wore the same brand of sports gear and discussed similar interests. I had already visited her home 6 times, familiar with the contents of her wardrobe and the anime posters and figurines on her walls. Thus, her hobbies were no secret to me, leading to her surprise and delight at finding running partners with shared interests. We found endless topics of conversation within our shared passions, and it knew exactly which skirt would match which blouse. My unique perspectives on color choices, guided by a woman's aesthetic intuition, only deepened her admiration. Our relationship naturally progressed, from jogging and walking in the park to meeting up at cinemas and cafes. Having been a woman before entering this cycle, I stood under how to captivate a girl sheared, surprising her on special days and always paying attention to the smallest changes in her. Ela wished her with compliments at every opportunity, ensuring she felt secure in both small and significant ways. Holding her close, I professed my love and willingness to sacrifice everything for her. Her initial surprise at the rapid development of our relationship eventually gave way to overwhelming affection, and she fell deeper into the relationship, becoming more outgoing and cheerful. However, as she grew more attached, I changed, becoming distant and erratic, replying to her messages only in the early hours with tired, perfunctory voice messages. She came cautious, fearful of upsetting me. Well, it grew more critical, watching her unbox a new parcel containing her favorite brand, latest blind box figurines. I played the piano indifferently, expressing my disdain for her immature tastes. I wish we could discuss Schubert or Mendelssohn, but you wouldn't understand the classics or art. I lamented. It's difficult for me to communicate with someone who hasn't been raised in an artistic environment like my childhood. Friends out hearing my words. She clenched her lips tightly, turning pale without uttering a sound. I softened Ed, my expression, and gently took her hand, placing it on the cold piano keys. To lightly press them. Darling, I'm not blaming you. I love you. I just want you to become better. It's okay if you can lay the piano. I'll teach you. Just do as I say. I coaxed her gently. Little by little, I led her into the tender trap I had set, making her dependent on the kindness Ito let out. She became docile and blushed, playing discordant tunes with me. Yes, darling, you're doing great. I caressed her hair, praising her quick learning. She grew more dependent on me, unable to stay away. But my criticism of her increased, and the warm th and sweetness between us diminished. She began to have restless nights filled with nightmares, losing a lot of hair, and work came increasingly silent. One day she mentioned wanting to go to the hospital, but he merely transferred her $1,000, telling her I was too busy and she should go by himself. She didn't respond or accept the transfer, only saying she understood and had money, so she DGO'd to the hospital on her own. Upon her return, I could tell she had been pondering and finally mustered the courage to speak up, saying the doctor suspected she might have moderate depression. I put down my phone, frowning at her. Depression? What depression? That's just the hospital wanting to make money off people like you. It dismissed her concerns. Her eyes reddened at instant lie, but she still argued with me. Seeing her distressed, I quickly soothed her. Okay. It know you've been feeling down lately. It's me fault. All my fault for being too busy to spend time with you. How about Itaki you to the beach for a vacation this weekend? She only nodded her head, tears streaking down, then shook her head. It's not your fault. Events progressed more smooth than I had imagined. Once again, I received her message in the middle of the night and, out of habit, chose to ignore it, turning over to continue my deep sleep this time. However, she on the other end of the phone did not wait for a reply that would never come. She opened the window, the cold night air rushing in, and with a leap, she merged into the dense darkness, ending her young and vibrant life. When the system informed me that the task was completed, the joy I expected to feel was absent. Instead, what filled me was an indescribable sense of gloom. Hosting. You've done perfectly. The target is dead, and not aspect of dirty blood stains. Your hands. This is the perfect crime, isn't it? I silently looked at my open hands. The palms thick, the lines clear. But why did I feel as if my hands were filthy? Not just my hands, but my entire body felt sullied. The system, true to its word, had me withdrawn from that horrific and disgusting cycle almost as soon as it had finished. Speaking, upon returning to the real world, I found myself awakening from a long coma in a hospital bed. Anna, you Ray finally awake, my mother said, gripping me tightly. Do you know how worried your mother and Ihavi been? My father's eyes were red, but he stood silently by our side. It turned out that all the horrors were just a dream, and my original memories instant lie flooded back. I am a police officer, having been in a coma since being injured in the pursuit of a fugitive. I've always told you not to be like your father. You wouldn't listen. A girl insisting on becoming a police officer has never given me a moment's peace in this life. My mother lamented tearfully, yet continued to ramble on, thinking back to that terrible dreams and looking at my parents, whom I had regained. Tears uncontrollably streamed down my face. Don't worry, Mom and Dad. I'll be more careful from now on. Although I had a significant case on my mind, seeing my parents in this state meant I probably wouldn't be returning to the station anytime soon. Yet, I cherished this warm moment deciding that staying by my parents' side for now was good. Once recovered, I returned to the police station without delay. Chief, we can't just conclude this case as suicide, I argued, spreading out the case files, pointing to the text and pictures. Chief, our previous investigation direction was wrong. We overlooked something crucial, I said, pointing to a photo of a man, her boyfriend, suspecting him of significant involvement. The chief, furrowing his brows, spoke slowly. Anna, I understand what you're saying. He adjusted his glasses. But we've been thorough with this case. There's no evidence directly linking her death to her boyfriend. Dwelling on this issue is pointless. The case is about to be closed. Since you were in charge before your accident, it was handed over to someone else. The handover was delayed, so it dragged on. Anna, your actions indeed merit recognition, and the department has decided to award you. They ray young and have a promising future. I hope you continue to excel. He gently patted my shoulder, clearly signaling it was time for me to leave. I pursed my lips and nodded, reluctantly leaving the chief's office. Yet, I couldn't let go, poring over the case files again, trying to find any clues in the seemingly straightforward case details. I had already made connections to the things I experienced in the dream. The similarities between that girl and the one in this case, who committed suicide. Simple family structure, simple social circle, introverted personality. But until entering the chief's office, it was all speculation. However, as I left the deceased boyfriend's micro expressions, when we discovered the body and notified the family, flashed before me. Having stared into the abyss and danced with it, how could it recognize the face of evil? His expression, so eerily similar to mine, conveyed the excitement of accomplishment, slight regret, guilt, and the secret thrill of a perfect crime. Unveiling the truth naturally means bearing more pain than ordinary people. Suddenly, the system's scolding voice thundered in my mind, hinting at me, perhaps suggesting I was the one to uncover the truth, thus bearing the pain of the cycle. The case details match the perfect crime I committed. In the dream, using technical means, I quickly recovered the victim's chat records with her boyfriend. The pattern was all too familiar. Intense pursuit followed by hot and cold attitudes, increasing criticism, and eventually almost no responses. Reviewing the dense chat records, I felt a chill every step, every word pulling the victim deeper into an inescapable hell. Yet, scouting through all the chat records, I found no evidence of physical harm he directly caused her. The autopsy report clearly stated death by falling, with organ damage from the fall, but no other abnormalities. I persisted, questioning the forensic expert. David, who did the autopsy for the jumping girl? Yes, the chief told me to be thorough. He suspected it was a simple suicide case, especially to look for signs of abuse on the body. But after several checks, inside and out, everything was consistent with death from a fall. David explained. It's Ahmed. The chief shared my suspicions about the so-called boyfriend. Yet, facts only proved he caused psychological harm, morally condemnable, but far from criminals. Frustrated, I dove into electronic evidence, eventually finding the what I need Ed. We arrested him, not for his girlfriend's case, but for a different crime. We suspect you were involved in a voyeurism cases and are arresting you under the law. Here are our badges and the arrest warrant, I said, showing him the paperwork. Discovering his social media accounts led to this unexpected break. I found videos he posted on website with views reaching a criminal level, made by secret live filming several women in a restrooms and using AI technology for face swaps. with irrefutable evidence. He had no defense. Though the prosecution could end, T charged him with murder. For the deceased girlfriend, the crime of distributing obscene materials got him a sentence of 1 year and 6 months, along with civil compensations to the victims, enough to trouble him significantly. His arrest spread his infamy among family and friends, effectively causing his social death. His company terminated his contract, and acquaintances distanced themselves. You end willing to associate with someone who committed such vile acts alone in prison. He could only reflect behind bars. A sentence far too light compared to a life lost, but it was all I could achieve within the framework of the law. Whether he dreams of his former girlfriend and feels any remorse at night, I don't know. As the night wind blows, I think of the nightmare-like cycle, hoping in another world, a girl just like her lives happily in her place.